I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Environment. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that teach all of us about the environment. This day was very special. I've probably had several hundred of these particular experiences and the pleasure of bringing you guests, but this was different. I met three gentlemen out at Boom Bay Resort on Lake Poygan, and they had a lovely boat, took me for a ride, and I want to tell you, they took me for a ride. It's the most enjoyable boat ride I have ever had, and Ron Bullock, my producer, and I learned a lot about Lake Poygan. In fact, we learned a lot about the environment. We learned a lot about Wisconsin. We learned a lot about history, and we want to share some of those things with you because we think it's important to you, and it's going to be a lot more important to your children and your grandchildren. Our first guest is someone that I read about every week in the Winneconne News. He's a real outdoor writer, and he's an interesting guy, but he's opinionated. I want you to meet him. It's Dan Rudebeck.
Hello, George.
Thank you very much for being with us today, Dan.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about your background with the environment.
Well, I was born and raised on the shore of Lake Winnebago, and in the process, I was also born to a father who hunted and fished, and who trapped, and who taught me various things at various stages in my life. And one of the things that he taught me was that if you don't take care of the place you're living, it's not going to be the place you're living forever.
And that certainly is a lesson for this generation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. As you know, I'm a past president of the Lake Poygan Sportsmens Club, and the guys that were with us today are also members and officers of the Lake Poygan Sportsmens Club. And the Lake Poygan Sportsmens Club has proven to be a very good vehicle, not only for taking care of the place where we live and play and work, but also for educating people on the importance of doing that. And over the course of the time since I became president, which was about 5 or 6 years after the club was founded, we have raised and spent well over $1 million on the Lower Wolf River and the Winnebago Lakes, primarily Lake Poygan.
Well, let's talk about the lake itself. It's more than one lake, it's a waterway. It's amazing how much water, an area that we have to take care of. Just tell us about what goes into this. How much water do we have here?
Well, the Lake Winnebago system, that is the 3 Winnebago lakes, Poygan, Winneconne, and Butamore, plus Lake Winnebago itself, plus the rivers that feed into it, contain 17% of the surface water in the state of Wisconsin. And the watershed that feeds this whole thing, including the lower Fox River where it flows into Green Bay, is some 6,300 square miles. It's huge.
Well, it's big. We just had a beautiful boat ride to see some of the things that were happening. We were fortunate to see all of the people who were fishing white bass up the river, and we must have seen 50, 60 boats. I saw several fish being landed, but there's all kinds of fish, for one thing. Tell us about the kind of fish in the system.
Well, because of our connection with Winnebago, we have both marshy species and pelagic species such as walleye and sturgeon. Those fish don't really need vegetation to live on and to hunt in. But these lakes up here before the habitat was changed by the damming of the river, were primarily bass and panfish and northern pike fisheries. Now, when you get off the shore anywhere on these lakes, you might catch perch, you might catch bluegills, you might catch magnum crappies, or you might catch dandy walleyes, you might catch trophy northerns, you might catch black bass, you might catch rock bass. The species goes on and on and on. The species list. There's all kinds of fish in this system now.
Now, you've talked about water level being artificially changed, and that has had quite an impact on the marsh. How was this area different 100 years ago before we started playing with the water level?
Well, 100 years ago, the lakes Poygan, Winnicott, and Butamore were basically just wide spots in the river. Poygan had a deep scour hole and a little bit of a lake configuration at that time, but most of it was just a huge floodplain. That's what these lakes are. They are the floodplains of the Wolf and the Fox rivers. And over the course of the last 100 years, with the raising of the water levels, the marsh plants that grew, especially the emergent marsh plants that grew in that floodplain, have disappeared. They've disappeared because their roots are buoyant. And when they raise the water level, the plants raised up with the water level. Now they don't have any connection to the bottom, and eventually they just broke up into small, discrete masses and floated away.
Why are these plants important to our ecosystem?
Well, all you got to do is look in the water. If there are no submergent and no emergent aquatic plants in these lakes, then there's going to be algae. And the greater the shortage of other aquatics, the more pronounced the population of algae is going to be. A couple of years ago, we had a year where there was virtually no aquatics growing in Winnebago or the upriver lakes, and the stench and the color of the ugliness of the water was so great that people showed up at the Corps of Engineers, one of the Corps of Engineers meetings in the late fall, and demanded that they change their management strategy so that we could grow some aquatics to keep the water clean. In addition, all these plants provide fish and wildlife habitat, and for bass particularly, and perch and crappies and panfish like that, and for northern pike, we need that kind of vegetation in order to keep a healthy fishery.
And what most lay people like me would call marsh, that has a cleansing effect in itself, doesn't it?
Oh, you betcha. There's two things going on here in this flowage. One of them is that there's a lot of silt being washed down from the farm fields into the rivers, which ultimately makes its way out into these lakes and down through Lake Winnebago. And the aquatics in the system help filter out that silt, so the water is clearer and cleaner. In addition to that, there's phosphorus being, 6,300 square miles. There's plant life that's decaying all the time. And all of that stuff is releasing phosphorus. The phosphorus runs off into the lakes, and again, it feeds the aquatics that are there. And if the aquatics aren't there, then it feeds the algae, and the algae eat it just robustly.
So in short, if we want to be able to keep healthy fish and other species in our water, have water clean enough so that people can safely drink it, have it clear enough so we can enjoy it, keep the algae and the stench out of it, we need more plants.
Exactly. And we need a diversity of species. Some emergents are great filters of particulate matter, especially, and if their roots are in shallow water in the bottom, and their leaves are growing up, they eat phosphorus. Wild celery, on the other hand, is a great filter for phosphorus, and it also helps to filter out the silt and the sand that come through.
I agree with you. Of course, I got a lot of my information from reading the Winneconne News and a guy named Dan Rudebeck. You know him?
I met him once, I think, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to meet him again today.
All right.
Thanks for being on the show. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. This is the second segment, and I have a new guest, and his name is Mark Palm. Nice to have you here. You're the secretary of the Lake Poygan Sports Club, am I correct?
That's correct, George.
All right. And I want to tell you why I invited you folks from the Lake Poygan Sports Club to this show. It turns out I'm the one who got invited, and I got one hell of a nice boat ride, and I learned a lot on a beautiful day and a beautiful lake. But I have attended a lot of sports banquets in the 50 years I've been in the Winnebago County area, and I've enjoyed most of them. Occasionally I win a raffle and bring home a gun I don't need. Once I bought a dog, but I quit drinking after that. However, I've noticed with all of the banquets, the one organization I have admired the most because they do something above and beyond having a party and a raffle, and that's this Lake Poygan group. They have projects, and you must be focused on projects. So I want you to tell the people a little bit about the organization, what the organization does, the importance of the volunteers in the organization, what they're trying to do, and why they could use some more muscle.
Well, since the beginning of the organization, in its beginning, Lake Poygan Sportsmens Club was primarily an ice fishing club, and from there it's evolved due to the hard work of all its early leaders and early members and their dedication to the outdoors. It's evolved into Lake Poygan Sportsmens Club, which goal in life is to help people enjoy the outdoors. And how we do that is by raising money and spending money to take care of the lakes, the habitat that keep the lakes worth going to, and the wildlife that depend on the habitat also. The club has been doing projects for decades to the tune of millions of dollars raised and spent to save marshes, to put reefs in the lake for better fishing, and like Rudy was explaining, take care of the aquatic vegetation. That's primarily what we do, and that in turn gives us clean water to boat on, and fish and swim and water ski and all of that.
Well, as Dan pointed out, the marshes were washing away largely because of high water, and the high water was artificially created by dams for whatever reasons, probably profit reasons in part. And so you've done some things to stop the loss of our marshes, and you showed me some reefs today. They're amazing. Describe those to our listeners, and Ron Bullock, our producer, was taking pictures, so that'll help.
Yeah, the reefs actually that are in the lake are submerged, and those would be, you could look at them as fish cribs or underwater habitat to provide cover for crustaceans and other small species that the fish feed on, and probably some spawning habitat for fish that spawn in rock. But what we tour today and what we're in the process of working on are actually break walls, and we've been involved over decades for building rock walls to protect shoreline and protect marshes. And the multi-million-dollar project that we've already started and that we're going to continue to build this year, another $1.5 million worth, starting June 1st, right at the mouth of the river, will begin to protect what's remaining of the marsh to the east of the mouth of the Wolf River, where it empties into Lake Poygan, but it will also provide calm waters for vegetation to reestablish, and also resting areas for migrating species of many birds, but diving ducks for one. Ducks Unlimited has been a partner with us on this project, and one of their main interests is a resting spot for canvasback ducks, which are migrating through here, and at one point in the history of Lake Poygan were here by the tens of thousands.
The people who are involved in the Lake Poygan Sports Club are obviously fishermen and hunters, kayakers, canoeists, boaters, sunbathers, but they're also people that we never think of, those of us that carry a shotgun all the time. They're artists, they're photographers, they're sketchers. They enjoy the silent sports of canoeing and kayaking, and they're just plain appreciating clean water for future generations. Who benefits from all of this work that's being done?
Yeah, that's actually something that is on my mind quite a bit. I'm virtually the only outdoorsman. When I say outdoorsman, I mean hunt and fish in my family, and but everybody in my family enjoys the outdoors, and it's always been important to me to point out to them that outdoors people who aren't hunters and fishermen have an awful lot in common with the sportsmen being hunters and fishermen. We want the same things. We want clean water, we want clean air, and forever, from my opinion, the majority of the work done for clean water and clean air have been dollars contributed, raised, and or spent by primarily fishermen and hunters.
There's no age limit to join your club, is there?
That's correct. Yep, and I'm sure there's plenty of members who buy memberships for their kids also. Another thing that the club does, with our money, the money that we raise, we also sponsor fundraisers for organizations like Navarino Nature Center, and their primary thing is getting kids outdoors. We also sponsor Learn to Fish with Us, which is a great organization that takes kids fishing. Kids everywhere from the inner city to the kids that should know and should be exposed to it in northern Wisconsin and Michigan.
Thank you. Those are some of the reasons why Lake Poygan Sports Club is my favorite group. They really do something.
We appreciate that.
I congratulate you.
Thank you, George.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm George Curtis. We're talking about the Lake Poygan Sports Club, which is my favorite club for lots of reasons. And we're lucky enough today to get the president, Matt Harp. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Being president is an honor, but that really means one big amount of work, concentration, sacrifice, and unless you can get your family involved, it's time away from the family. Tell me why you have decided to make this investment.
Well, the long and short of it is what the club gives back. I've seen what the club has done before I was president, and really just wanted to be a part of that. There's so many events and projects that we've done over the years that it's contagious, and I want to be a part of it.
Tell us about some of the projects that this particular club has provided that people may not know about.
Well, starting early on, it was simply about plowing roads out there, lake access for the public in the winter. In deep snow years, you aren't getting around on that lake without a plowed road. And it also is a safety factor too, and you can get safely to your destination. If a plow truck's been there, that the ice is safe. So if you stick close to the roads, you're okay. So we started with plowing roads, but moved on really from there to habitat. And you know, I'd say 90% of what we do now is habitat. And it's lately we've been focusing on break walls, but that's not all we do. We also have fish reefs out there. We have a woody structure that we're doing on the shore of the river. We have a safety beacon out there, a carp gate to help for aquatic plants in Pages Slough. Just, you know, we fund some other organizations that have like-minded philosophies, and we're pretty good at not only raising some money but leveraging that money with some public funds that are out there, and also some private individuals that are happy to jump on board with us.
And I know you happen to work with the government, with the DNR, with the Fish and Wildlife, with the Corps of Engineers. You have some expertise. In fact, you personally have a lot of expertise. You're a water biologist, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a degree in biology and fisheries management from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and I think they do a good job of giving you a well-rounded education of not only the aquatic environment, which was my major, but also in the soils, wildlife, and water resources out there. But I've been practicing biology, aquatic biology, for 25 years-ish. That sounds weird to say, it's been that long, but you know, there's a lot to learn out there, and it's I think the big thing is just to be observant of what's changing over the long term, especially.
I'd like to bring a couple of grandkids to some of the activities for the Poygan group. You've got meetings and banquets. Tell us about them.
So our major events of the year would include our banquet, which is in April of each year. We hold it on a Monday night. And lately it's been at the Fin and Feather. We were at Ted's Grand View for many years before that. Our banquet's a big fundraiser. We have a raffle drawing in July, and we have a calendar raffle. But we have a winter fishery as well. We just had our 4th annual fishery, and a lot of kids show up at that, and we also build 50 to 75 wood duck houses on a Saturday, a cold Saturday in January, in a nice heated shop where you get to hang out with a bunch of old guys and screw some wood duck boxes together. And lately we've been getting more kids showing up at that too, and getting some hands-on type thing, but you know, as importantly, hanging around the old guys and getting away from any of the computery stuff.
I was just going to say, it's never been tougher to get the attention of a young person today with all of the gadgets that I don't understand. There's so much competition for their minds and their views. We've got to take those kids out and show them birds' nests and have them pick night crawlers and catch a fish with the night crawlers and bring them back to nature, or they're not going to care about nature, and that means nature's gone.
Absolutely. We've got a I think we just have been it's just gone kind of by the wayside unintentionally, but I think now we actively need to get them back out there and show them around. I'll tell you what, sitting in a duck blind or ice fishing in a shanty, it's not necessarily about catching the fish or shooting the duck or whatever. It's a really neat sunrise. It's wow, I never saw that bird before. What's that one? And you know, from the clouds in the sky to the waves that the wind is making, there's a whole lot of neat stuff out there, and it's just a matter of reappreciating what's out there.
Well, and the key to all of this is volunteering. And I don't just mean raising your hand, it's actually participating, contributing your experience and expertise like you do, and showing up to build those houses. And you don't get paid a dime, do you?
No, not at all. None of our guys do, and you know, that was established from day one that, you know, nobody was going to profit from any of this, and everybody, it's a labor of love. It really is, and it's just a really a matter. It's a way to give back, but it's bigger than that. We're not just giving back immediately. I think we're giving back for the long term.
Absolutely. We're all going to profit. Future generations are going to profit. Your group and other groups like it educate people on how important it is to take care of our planet, our air, our water, and respect the soil, and avoid putting things into the soil and water that don't dissipate at 100 years. And so people already can't drink the water in 3 or 4 counties in this state. And we are probably the best state in the union in taking care of our ecology.
Yeah, we are. We train a whole lot of natural resource professionals here, and a lot of them head out throughout the United States. And a degree from UW-Madison and Stevens Point is well respected out there in the country. And I mean, we've had the Water Institute that's on the shores of Lake Mendota in Madison is world renowned, and so we train some good guys, and we do have an appreciation for water, and we've got a lot of water. I mean, they're fighting over gallons of it, you know, down in the Southwest, and we have water on top of water. But I think to a fault, we've just assumed that it's endless, but it's not.
And you got some great training from the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point in the environmental sciences. Back when I was 17, I was in Kodiak, Alaska, working on a fishing boat, and it wasn't even a state then, it was U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Guy came up to me, and I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He said, I hear you're from Wisconsin. And I said, well, that's right. He said, have you heard of the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point?
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
Well, Matt, I'm sorry that we're out of time because you have so much to offer, your group has so much to offer, and I appreciate the boat ride and the day. It's been a real pleasure.
It was a gorgeous day. Thanks for coming.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, there you have it. Another example of how man has interfered with Mother Nature, going to simplify things, make them better and smoother, and it didn't quite work out, did it? In fact, when you think about it, almost every time we interfere with Mother Nature, we make things worse. And then we ignore our mistakes and think they'll iron themselves out. And then we discover, like the good people at the Poygan Sports Club have discovered, nothing irons itself out unless you've got dedicated people ironing. And that's why we need more groups like this group, and we need to keep feeding young people to strengthen this group, because these folks are ironing. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.